and thanks for having me on again. And I always enjoy these conversations. And so, as we were talking a little bit before, 2021 has already been quite a interesting year, and I'll just leave it at that, as to not get political or anything. But on an individual level, there's things that we can still be doing to better our year as business owners. More specifically, basketball trainers. And so it is cliche, but most people don't stick to their New Year's goals, but I try not to make them New Year's goals. Let's make it an annual goal for our business. And then how can we attack that, on a very, very minute level? So weekly, monthly, et cetera. So just a couple of goals, and this really applies to me too, despite working in finance. I would say one of the key things, especially for trainers, social media presence is pretty big. It's not everything, but it is big because it does allow you to share your content, allows you to share your events, and it keeps your calendar kind of on the forefront, where everyone can see it all the time. They don't have to go visit your website to just go look at your calendar. It's always there. So, something that's really applicable. I don't like just giving these broad topics of, feel the energy and like all this feel good stuff, but something very applicable that I'm going to be doing in my own business is set a goal for the week, whether it's you post daily or if you're not to that point, plan a number. For me right now, the time schedule that I have, for me, it's make at least 2 posts per week, something applicable on social media as to show that I'm being active, to feed that following. So I don't know what that number looks like for everyone, but I would say, for trainers, you guys have, an unlimited amount of potential to create content, to record content, especially if you're having in young athletes, older athletes. If you're going to new facilities, there's a ton of things you can be posting. Video content as well. So don't shy away from the video. It's really easy to find a cool graphic, and those are all good and everything. But the way that Google works, it's connected, and they actually own YouTube. So video content, as far as the optimization, when you're typing things in, define like basketball trainer in Greenville or basketball trainer in Charlotte. If you're using those properly and you have good video content, people are going to start to get to know you, without ever getting, meet you face to face. So that's really on the grassroots level. You want that connection, and really just grow your following as well. Obviously, some people want to be social media influencers, and I think we've talked about it in the past. Social media following isn't everything, but you do need to have a presence and show that you do have a decent following. And then it never hurts to have a very active following. I mean, 5,000 followers is better than 1,000. So, I mean, all of that helps. That's kind of one of the first goals I have for myself, is just social media goals. I have some other financial goals as far as getting clients, and that can definitely apply for trainers, whether it's you want to scale your business from, where you are and you want to fill up that schedule more. That's something to set. So like hypothetically, if you wanted to bring on $100,000 more of revenue, break that down by the week. What does that mean? Like, what does that actually mean by the week? Do you need to get $50 more a week? Do you need to get $150 more a week? If you're able to do that, then in the times when you're lagging, or maybe you get a cold, God forbid you get COVID or something, and you're kind of out of it for a week or two, you don't want to have that lag. You want to still have that goal you can shoot for and say, well, you know what, the last couple of weeks has been kind of a loss for me, but going back in, I'm hitting it. I'm going to hit that 150 a week. I got to add on to what I already have. So setting those goals is definitely something achievable, because then when you step back, if you're adding $100 a week, that's $400 a month. So like, I know that may sound on a small scale, but like on a large scale, thousands of dollars, that compounds. So if you're able to break that down mentally, I know for me that helps. So that's a couple of my goals. There's a couple too that I think apply that I feel like are overlooked in business in general, not just for trainers, but it's making those calls, man. I don't know, Myson, what kind of format you use to make your calls or stay active as far as retention is concerned. Maybe you can speak more to that, but making those calls, man. I know cold calling and stuff is something that a lot of businesses shying away from, and consumers don't necessarily always want to get these random car warranty calls, but you still got to be making those calls. If you have a newsletter or something that goes out, you've got to be consistent with that. Let's say all those goals, break them down, like I said, week to week. So that's a couple of the goals that I have, Myson. I don't know if you, one other thing I do have, I think is important, and you can speak to this, and this will probably be a good transition. Maybe you can put in some input, but based on your budget, if you can afford it, I would say dedicate a nice chunk of your budget strictly to marketing. Now that may mean that your salary and your take-home pay is, maybe it comes out of that. I'm not sure everyone's financials, but I know in my industry, I think it's less than 5% of the budget is spent on marketing, which for financial firms is usually pretty sizable. So less than 5% is hardly, it's a good chunk of money, but it's nothing. So I think what we get in the mindset of thinking marketing is I'm posting on social media, I'm sending out a newsletter or a flyer, and I'm sending out my email. So that's marketing. But there's, if you're getting more strategic with it, if you have a CRM system where you keep, customer data, all of that is important. So I don't know, Mike, maybe you can speak to that, but I would say my goal for 2021 is to spend more money on marketing, because I know the return on that is going to be, 5 or 10x.
Man, you're spot on with all those. I'd add that the retention calls and the prospecting for new clientele is so important. And you can consider social media posts, like you're saying, you have a certain number of posts you want to have per week. I consider that prospecting as well for new clients. I come from the background in corporate where we smiled and dialed, and we had to dial for dollars. So I was calling 50 people per hour, had my script, got hung up on. So I know what that's like. And I'm not saying basketball trainers need to do that, but I do think that is one channel that is effective, that's impactful. As far as the money spent towards marketing, I'm with you on that. I'm actually going to spend more on the marketing as well, and like you said, be more strategic about it. Flyers, they work well for a certain audience. Instagram ads work really well. They're pretty inexpensive for the impressions, but allocating a certain budget for all of those channels and seeing which one has the most return on the investment, because it's offense. Really, defense can be many things. It can be the administrative assistant that you have. Defense can be more so of the budgeting we're talking about here. In the insurance you have, what you need those things, but the offense is what's going to help us out, which is, like you're saying, the marketing piece. So what I've been really wanting to focus on is more so marketing that gets more clients in, and be more attentive to the dollars that it takes for the cost of service. For the training, obviously there's a gym, there's a trainer. You may or may not even be able to put, I don't know, like the gas for the basketballs. It's kind of iffy. I'm not a CFO, but just being more attentive to those small costs and making sure that I'm getting enough dollars in to cover those costs, have a higher gross margin, and bring in more dollars to the bottom line. But you're spot on with everything, man. I'm agreeing with you on that with the prospect.
And to piggyback on that, sorry to interrupt. To piggyback on that, I think that the application you use is perfect for people that work within sports. If you're always playing defense, that's really good. I mean, teams win playing defense. But the thing that you're taking out of that, if you're not scoring points, then you definitely are not going to win. So maybe you're scoring a touchdown or two, or maybe you're scoring, 20, 30 points a game. But if you're not winning games by just playing defense. And so, you do have to go out on the offensive end. Typically playing offense depends on the person, but for some people, offense is harder than defense. For others, defense is harder than offense. And I think that's a really good application point and a good example of that. So, I mean, yeah, paying attention to the small details on the offensive end is something that if you are growth minded, that's going to get you there. Is you got to be more offensive minded.
So to recap, you have, obviously there's a compounding impact on breaking down the finances on a weekly basis and really quantifying and putting numbers to the amount of activities like posting and different things of that nature. So we got the weekly portion there for the 52 weeks for the year. What are your thoughts when it comes to having a 1, 3, 5 year, or how do you break those up or advise people to break those down?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it all depends on, how your growth is going on the short term until you can kind of, project what your long term is going to be. So if you're hitting your goals consistently, again, what I was talking about is for that person that maybe is starting fresh and wanting to make a change or wanting to exponentially grow, that's the starting point. If you're already doing that and you already are hitting your goals, you are profitable after taxes and after business expenses and overhead, then sure, go ahead and set those goals. And that's where maybe a business coach comes in, maybe someone like myself. I would say sit down and look at what are your expenses? What does inflation look like over the next couple of years? Are property values, rising? So maybe your rent is probably going to go up in a couple of years. Maybe, there's other costs that come into things as you scale your business, like hiring people. If you hire a social media marketer, something like that. That's standard financial planning. I would sit down and talk about it, because just because you made, I don't know, $500,000, gross revenue this year doesn't mean the next year you're going to make the same. It may mean you make more, it may mean you make less, but you need to have your finger on the pulse of kind of the area you're in, and just the economy in general. Now, you don't have to go super deep into it. I would say those are all great questions to ask. That 1, 3, 5 year, because as a trainer, things can change super fast, positively, but also negatively. I mean, you could have to move for some reason, or maybe something happens in your area where it's hurt super bad financially. People can't afford the service, or maybe the reverse happens. And so, with all that being said, those are all great questions to consider. And I would say it's on an individual basis. If you're hitting your goals consistently, then you can kind of project what the future is going to be like. And then I would sit and talk with a professional about it and say, I really want to knock this out of the park. Maybe that means spending more on the business so that you can get more tax deductions and more money back into the business. That's a way to ramp it up. Yeah, they're all great questions to ask yourself.
Question before we go into talking about planning to open your own gym and the 5 key steps. What are your thoughts towards reserves? How much cash reserve? So let's say the trainer has all the budgets, they got the entire cost, their expenses together, and then they try to find out what their revenue needs to be on top of that and how much profit they want to have. What is your suggestion in regards to cash reserves?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the budget, and because it's not a personal thing. If it was your personal, I would say 3 to 6 months of expenses is typically the standard, just so you can pay your bills and pay your food. I would say the same sort of applies to your business. I mean, God forbid you get sick or something happens and you're not going to have revenue for a couple of months. You need to have some reserves to at least pay your debts and break even. But yeah, I would say putting money back into your business is always better than paying yourself a big salary up front. I actually sat down with someone to possibly be a consultant for them for their business. They're starting a new venture soon. Some of their numbers on their business plan were a little shaky. The projections were a little higher than I thought. But the big thing that kind of disappointed me a bit was the person was going to pay themselves a pretty large salary off of the projections that I already thought were inflated. And so I think that goes back to just being diligent. If you want to own a business and grow your business, then your own salary should not be, maybe not even top 5 on the list. You should be putting money back, whether it's buying better equipment, buying swag to hand out. That's a marketer for your business, or even just saving money so that you can go get a loan, and that'll transition into what we talk about in a little bit. But I would say at least, like, for retirement, typically it's 10 to 15% of your budget. 10 to 15% of whatever you make should just go to either a cash reserve or some type of investment account to continually make money for your business. That's what I think personally.
Yeah, I'm taking notes, man, because it does feel good to see and have a lot of money in the bank account just sitting there. But at the same time, it's like you're wasting that money just sitting there in the bank, not accruing any kind of interest, or a very small interest at the very least, and it's not moving, it's not working for you in any kind of way, and you want to just get taxed more on that rather than just investing it back into the business. So I'm listening to you right now, man.
I tell you, man, some of the most wealthy people that I know, and I'm talking like real wealth, like top 1% of America. There's a couple of them that I know that are, I won't say names, but they're very wealthy. And their checking account might be $1,000 because it doesn't matter to them right now. They know money, they divvy it out. And so, like, it really doesn't matter if you're worried about seeing a huge number, and I'm not saying you are, but if you're worried about it, seeing a huge number in your bank account, when you pull up that Wells Fargo app or whatever bank you use, if you're like, man, I got that money, but it's just sitting there, that's a dangerous game to play, to just let it sit around. So don't get focused on the numbers at all.
That's huge, huge. So I'll ruminate on that one here on mute, but I want you to kind of go into the planning for the gym, if you don't mind. Thanks for sharing that last nugget.
For sure. Yeah. So opening a gym, I know that a lot of people have been in the group have been talking about opening a gym. And I think this point is actually near and dear to my heart as I kind of grow my business where I'm at now. Everyone, is a business owner, sort of has that entrepreneurial spirit. And I still have that. Athletics and, fitness, specifically basketball, have all been passions in my life for, since I can remember. My wife is actually a personal trainer, and she's worked at all types of gyms, from, physical therapy all the way up to individual personal training, group classes, all that. So opening a gym has actually been something that I want to, and maybe you didn't know that, Myson, but that's something I want to do in the future. So that's one of my saving goals even now. So hopefully that, conveys itself in how I talk about it, because I'm also passionate about it. But as far as taking that next step and being a trainer, one of the biggest headaches, I'm sure, starting out training, you were there, I think 3 years ago, or maybe 4 now, is just finding court time. You just got to find court time. I know that you've talked to some trainers that they lived in super hot climates and they had to train outside on asphalt, and that just sounds like death to me. But you got to make it work. So I mean, if you're wanting to scale your business, I definitely think owning a facility of some type is like key. That's the next level. And so I have 5 points that I think that can be applicable to it. So I can rattle them off and we can go in depth if you want.
Let's
I,
do
I
it.
would say I would say the first one is just standard. It sounds boring, but get a business plan together. But what does that mean? Business plan is something that's tossed around a ton. I'm sure anyone that went to college, if you studied any type of business, you had to do a business plan or a marketing plan. What does that mean? But a business plan basically is putting everything on paper, trying to figure out how finances are going to come in, what's going to go out. It's really just a brain dump on paper. And I would suggest doing it over the course of months, to be honest. It's a huge decision to take on a commercial space. The rates are typically a little higher. The payoff period is usually a little shorter. And so it's a big, yes, if you have a successful business and your cash flow is good, then you'll be able to make those payments. But, the typical home mortgage is, 15 or 30 years, but, most commercial mortgages are usually 7, 8, maybe 10 years if you can get it. So you're talking, hefty payments. We're talking sometimes $10,000 a month just goes to paying off that mortgage. In the first few years, it only goes to interest. So those are all things you need to consider in your business plan. So I'd say the first question to ask yourself is, do you need funding? I'm sure there's a few trainers out there that have been doing it long enough that, they've got a good reserve and they can go lay down, 20%. That's another thing on commercial. Typically, most banks or lenders are going to ask for 20% upfront, which is hefty on a $1 million space or $500,000 space. 20%, that's real dollars that just, it's poof. It's not gone. You have equity in it, but it's no longer at your use. It's being used. So you need funding. And that can look like a ton of things. And if anyone has questions, by all means, I don't do lending services, but that's part of what I plan for almost on a weekly basis with one of the business owners I work with. So definitely can connect you to quality people that have ethical practices and all that. So, but I would say that's a big question. How are you going to pay for it? Because like everything else, if you can't pay for it, down the line, that's going to mess you up. But I'd say another key aspect of a business plan is to uncover the incorrect assumptions that you have about the market that you're in. It's really cool to sit and talk about all these business ideas. Yeah, man, can you imagine like if this school would just send their players here, and if I can meet that person, and there's a lot of things that are fun to talk about when you're planning business or brainstorming. But you got to get honest with yourself on the business plan, because if it doesn't work, then what? Then if you have a $500,000, $1 million loan out, like that doesn't matter if you have all these cool ideas without action. So uncover those incorrect assumptions and be honest with yourself. If you don't have it, find that customer base, find the location. Maybe you're not happy where you live. Maybe you want to move to another city, but right now it's paying the bills in another city. You got to figure that out. There's a lot of startup costs that go with moving your business. It's very heavy decisions, but again, be honest with yourself. Check out the Small Business Association website. There's a lot of helpful tips there if you want to go super deep on it. But I'd say if anything about point one that you remember is discover your mistakes during the planning process. And I'll just leave it at that. So discover those mistakes early on. So yeah, the next point I have, set realistic expectations. It kind of goes into, uncovering those incorrect assumptions, but set realistic expectations. What are your expenses? Are your expenses super high? That means you have to make more money? Do you have people on staff? That's extra salary. Based on if they're 1099 or W-2, that adds cost or takes away some cost. And then really your cash flow. And I know you've talked about it before, Myson, but just because you're making $100,000 gross does not mean you're running a $100,000 business per se. So there's things that come out. So set realistic expectations, what you want that to look like, what you want your salary to look like, what lifestyle you want to live while you're training. If you can kind of, eat dirt for a little bit and make it work, then long term, that's going to be better off. And I know, I hit that dead horse almost every time I talk, but that's a huge principle to kind of set in your life. And then, a realistic expectation is, what are you going to spend on technology? Owning a gym is a little bit different because, I'm sure that most trainers have some type of Excel sheet, or maybe they have like QuickBooks for their taxes or something that keeps everything together. But if you really want to hit that next level as far as gym ownership, is getting a high-end touch to it, is having a gym software. And there's a ton of them out there. You got to fully vet those people because you don't want to just get some janky system to run, but that helps really sustain the business of where you're at and then grow it. That helps you project numbers. You can build a database, an email list. All of that goes into play with marketing, growing your business, making sure everything's paid on time, making sure that customers, whether they're on auto pay or not, that way you don't have to worry about swiping a credit card every time they come in, or someone handing you $50 cash. Like, it really streamlines your business. It's a high-end touch, and I think customers appreciate it. And then another thing, just being honest, as far as the business is concerned, as long as you're getting paid, you're running your business. So I know a couple of gym owners in the past that they've had clients get annoyed at them because they're set on auto pay, but maybe the client forgot. But the gym owner is just like, well, you've already paid for it. Why don't you go ahead and come on in? Let's go ahead and get it. You've got 6 sessions now. Like, you don't have to pay for it for another couple months. Those are all good things as far as retention is concerned, because then you get another opportunity to give good service and show them why they paid the money for it. So number 2 is set realistic expectations. Number 3, I sort of hit on it earlier, but is outsource professional skills. After you've kind of got that business plan together, as far as like what's coming in, what's going out, what are the startup costs, maybe it makes sense to hire someone for professional service. Now, that doesn't mean that you're hiring a full-time staff member, but maybe you do contract someone out, 5-10 hours a week strictly for marketing. Tons of people, I know tons of people, especially in Greenville, that all they do is just marketing. They market for 10, 20, 30 businesses, and that's all they do. So like, contract them out. It's really easy on the staffing aspect. You just send them a paycheck, and there's even websites that you can pay them through the website. So you don't even have to, you can just contract them for, if you only need 2 hours a week, easy enough. And maybe you don't want a specific person, maybe it's a different person every time. I don't know, you can get crazy with it. But the main point as far as outsourcing is, most gyms fail within the first 5 years because they have a lack of business skills. No, think about that again. 5 years seems like a long time, but most of them fail within 5 years because they don't have the business skills. I think that the group of trainers that you have together, especially in this Facebook group, is a very capable group. The conversations that are had in the group are great, and I think they're definitely a very eager group and successful. But just because you know more about the game doesn't mean that you're better at running a business. I mean, I'm sure the best mind as far as basketball is concerned, maybe he is a good business owner, maybe she is a good business owner, but if you want your business to succeed, and we've talked about it before, basketball training is 60% business, 40% basketball. So if you want your business to succeed and you don't know how to do the skills that you need, whether it's marketing or staffing or social media, whatever it is, hire someone, spend the money. And again, that goes back to pay yourself less if you need to. So it's important for the long-term success, which again, once it's long-term, your salary is, whatever you want it to make. If you want to make, $250,000 a year, you can do it. It's there. So I'd say
I'm sorry to go on to that. I mean, I do worry sometimes in the group that, because like in basketball, we can see the score. In business, you can't see the score. You can't see what somebody's profit is. You can't see what the cash flow is. You can't see all those things. So it's hard, because on social media, they may look as if they're doing something that they actually aren't. They look good up above water, but underwater it may be terrible. And we in this group, we like to talk about basketball stuff. So I'll post something and it'll be about how many kids should you have in a group. And it'll be about the basketball training and the skill side of it, like you're saying. But when we talk about something business-wise, maybe like this, which is like invaluable information that you probably wouldn't get as specific as you're giving it in regards to basketball, it doesn't do as well. So I do worry sometimes that we don't focus on the business side because we don't know it, or because we just don't care about it as much. And it is more, if not just as or more important. So I just wanted to add that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and as far, it's important, like, think of your basketball training business as a house. What you see, maybe it's the most beautiful house, it's 5,000 square feet, there's a pool and all this stuff, but without a dirty brick foundation, that house ain't standing. Like, And so the business side of things is your foundation. And so I would say nothing is more important, because you don't have the beautiful training business without the dirty foundation. So get your hands dirty. You know what I mean? So that's point number three. Outsource those professional skills if you need it. Number four, sort of touched on it as well, but build that membership base. I would say before you ever consider opening a business, you got to make sure you've got that cash flow. And so again, maybe you've got some money from inheritance, or maybe you worked another job and saved up and you're, career changer, but make sure you're membership based in the location you're going to be, the area you're going to be. Maybe it's within 20 minutes, especially if you're doing training after school, or if you're doing training kind of through the summer. Some kids can come after school because maybe their school is really close by, but maybe they live 45 minutes away. That's something you need to consider. If the bulk of it is coming from, 30 minutes, it's something to consider as far as location. Another thing to consider for location too is, the cost of where it's at. I know like most downtown areas are a little more expensive. It may be cool to have that downtown space, but maybe you do step out and get a little cheaper. It's a very easy decision, but making sure your membership base, is there. It doesn't always, it's not always your favorite to necessarily do. Maybe you love training high-end professional athletes or 5-star recruits, and that's like what really gets you going. You don't really like training the younger kids, or you don't like training like teams or something like that. For the most part, I would think there's more kids in that level, or even more teenagers in that range of maybe they just want personal training. Maybe they're not ever going to go play college, or maybe they're going to play at some low-level college and they're not really a 5-star recruit. There's more of those than there are 5-star recruits. So sure, that's cool, but this group is paying your bills. Maybe it's not your favorite, but if you're running a business, it doesn't really matter. You're trying to pay the bills, but you're also reaching another market. So I'd say that's important for your membership base. It's really cool. Again, I think that goes back to your point as far as social media, to look at all those. I think Lethal Shooter is one I think is really cool. He trains, obviously, like he'll have AD in there one week and then James Harden in the next week. All he does is train shooting. He didn't get there, like just like last year. Like he built it up. I'm sure he was training in some small, YMCA gym or a high school gym, some no name, if you will. Sure, his acumen and I think he played in the league a little bit. I know he played, I believe, at Villanova or something, but all of that takes time to build up. So as far as building up, if you want to get to that level, 1 or 2 here and there 5-star recruits is good. That's not necessarily paying your bills. As far as membership base too, you want to know whether you're on a contract basis, or if you're on like a package deal and they buy 2 months at a time. Maybe they buy a season, like a semester at a time. Those are all important things to consider. And then again, I mentioned it also, but membership base, make sure they're on auto payment. I would recommend that personally, just because you can project things a little more in advance, and they also have to come to you to change if they don't want to be on auto payment anymore. So it's a good way to know, project your business. So that's number 4, is build that membership base. And then I would say the last point, sort of touched on it throughout, but start small. There's no reason to go in and buy a 40,000 square foot facility just because they've got turf on this side and they've got squat racks and they've got a full court over here, and then we've got another area over here for some type of training, and we've got therapy in the back. Maybe that's your end goal, and good. Set that goal high, get there, because that's what you want, a high-end facility. But start small. If it means you have a space that can only fit a half court, and maybe you have to put up 2 goals on the side, doesn't matter. You could still train in that facility. So start small, scale slowly, and that all goes back to cash flow coming in and out. Because maybe you have a group of young people that come through, that more people in your area like basketball, and then it ebbs and flows, and then fewer, more people are playing football or something. It doesn't apply to you. Scale slowly so that your space is filling your needs. You'd rather have it be too small of a space where a good problem to have is to grow into a bigger space than have a bigger space and it looks all empty. Nothing's worse than playing a basketball game in an empty gym. That's the same thing. Nothing's worse than being a trainer in an empty gym because you bought too big. So I would say don't compare yourself to others and just start small. And then one specific thing I always like to add at the end of any conversation is, how are you networking? So I would just, as a challenge, if you're looking to open a business, a gym, talk to at least 3 different people that own a gym and do what you want to do. and then they'll give you their personal opinion and also your networking. So that's something specific, I think. So the 5 things: 1, business plan; 2, set realistic expectations; 3, outsource those professional skills; 4, build a membership base; and 5, start small.
I like that, and I'll come back to point. I think it was either 4 or 5 with the seasonality. It's still really point 5 the seasonality, because Q4 usually is, maybe I'll say, for the second largest revenue quarter. Then really, I think it's Q2 is the best, the biggest when you get to around that summertime. And I may be wrong.
Mhm.
Q3 may be the summer. Q4 may be the more the winter time. When Q1 and Q2 hits, though, it's like, do you have enough reserves that you budget enough to withstand some of those slower months? Especially like
Right.
you said, when you do have a lease that's $8,000, $10,000 per month, and the kids go play football because they're a multi-sport athlete or
Yep.
whatever the case may be. So starting small, it allows you to see those things and not be hit by them, not be hindered by them and hurt, and you can
Mhm.
plan ahead. So I mean, I like all of the advice. Discover your mistakes during the business planning process, the realistic expectations, the outsourcing, which is huge, needs to be done more. For me, building a membership and starting small, man, I love those tips.
And I think one more thing too, to you just maybe kind of think of it, and it's not really a pivot, but as far as outsourcing the professional skills, maybe you're at the point where you're ready to open a gym. And of course, we're talking about basketball trainers, but opening a gym, you can do more things, but that does go into outsourcing professional skills. Maybe for whatever reason in your area, physical therapists need a space, or a chiropractor needs a space. Maybe you cost share with someone at your gym and they have a corner, or, a massage therapist, or even like a smoothie bar or something. Get creative with it. Of course, we're talking about basketball training, and I don't want to get off track, but as far as outsourcing professional skills, maybe there's a space that's just like, this is the space, this is the platinum level, and I really want to go in on it. If you can cost share with someone who does something better than you, and you guys can help each other out with the same clientele, that's a win-win too. Maybe you have a personal trainer come in that's not a basketball trainer at all. All they do is strength and conditioning. Partner together, figure something out. Again, don't want to get off track, but that's another idea I just thought of.
Man, that is not off track. That's a huge bonus. And I'm thinking, like, what are some of the different businesses? You can have a performance training business. You could have a uh, really yoga, a stretch practitioner. You could have physical therapy. I mean, what else? You could have so many things in there with you to share that cost on the leasing space.
I would say if you want to have a brief think tank, something that I think is instrumental, especially if depends on the clientele and if the parents, like what the parents do. I'd say appeal to the parents while they're there. That's the beauty, and I think the YMCA model is there's something for the kids, there's something for the parents, there's something for the older people. They kind of hit everything. And they just have built a reputation on that. So, you hit on yoga. Yoga has been something I've been, passionate about for years. I do it personally. My wife's also, certified in yoga. And so, yeah, I mean, offer a service to what maybe while the young person is training, the mom or the dad or whoever brings them there, maybe they can hit a yoga class during the same time, or maybe they do bar. I know bar is really big in the mom community. I don't know if you've ever done a bar class, but it's actually really hard. It's not cool to talk about. That jank will kick your butt. It's tough, but yeah, man, get creative. Like, appeal to everyone that's walking in your doors. Even if, the young people are the only ones training, someone brought them there unless they can drive themselves. So appeal to that person too. Maybe they have something there for them, maybe a coffee shop. I don't know what it looks like. Get creative.
I love that, man. I love that idea and that thought process. So look, if nobody else listens to this and gets value from it, I'm going to come back to this for these 5 tips for the bonus right there as well. And some of the other things we talked about too. So I appreciate you taking time to have this conversation.
Yeah, man, for sure. Not to put you on the spot, but do you have any goals that you would be willing to talk about just briefly for your 2021?
More so, that's a great question. This year's been different because I've gotten out of that same framework of, hey, this is New Year resolution. I'm going to do this. Last year, I hit the goal for the 6-figure mark, which I'm excited about. Now I want to start planning, like you just said, towards a gym. So you definitely want to have 6 figures. Want to have a higher net profit than we had this year.
Hmm.
Really planning for larger things. I'm engaged, so one,
Yeah.
having a set salary that I
Yeah.
pay and obviously as minimal as possible, but having a set salary, getting to a certain revenue goal with Hoops Institute, the playbook, the software portion for the basketball trainers and for the basketball training business. So if I were to say like a certain goal revenue wise for the entire year, it would be the $250,000 mark, and obviously having a certain net profit with that as
Yeah,
well.
that next mark. That's what I was thinking. That 250,000 mark is pretty key too, because you can do more, and that's cool, man. I just wanted to ask this because I think it's more applicable than some of the stuff I'm saying, because you are a basketball trainer. So, yeah, man, those are all great goals. That's awesome that you hit that goal last year. I didn't know that, so that's really cool. Yeah, man, that married life, man, you're getting on that married life. So, congrats, man. Good luck with that. That's another wrench you got to plan for. You know, it throws a wrench in everything, not in a bad way, but you know, wife or husband or kids, whatever it is, those are all important things to consider. So I like that.
And I need to be talking to you about these planning. I'm gonna lead it off here, talking to you with the planning and just seeing what that will look like, man. I really am interested too, just off of the nuggets you've been giving here. And obviously it just makes sense. And it just clicked with me when we were talking, but
Mhm.
I'll be talking to you soon about that. And hopefully we can schedule some time outside of this conversation.
For sure. Yeah. Appreciate everyone. And again, I love the interaction in the group, and yeah, I'm always available for questions, or just to give my 2 cents. So happy to help. And yeah, let's crush 2021.